It's time for me to go back and revisit all of the Hoenn starters and see how they do in Pokemon Emerald playthroughs. It's been a while since I played these. They were the first 3 videos I did in Emerald version. Back then I had very little experience, so let's see where they're currently ranked in the first attempt tier list. One thing I do need to say about this, I played Sceptile with a vastly different methodology than I have ever used again on the channel, so its ranking here is artificially higher than both Blaziken and Swampert. Right now Blaziken is in the D tier with a time of 2 hours, 35 minutes, and 40 seconds. Sceptile is just below it in the E tier with a time of 2 hours, 46 minutes, and 4 seconds. And then we have to go all the way down to the Surge tier to get Swampert's result, which is 3 hours, 28 minutes, and 12 seconds. I did not do well with Swampert, and at the time I said this about it.
I get asked a lot, what's the most frustrating playthrough you've done? And honestly, I think Swampert might be it. Maybe it's tied with Seal.
In that video, I went on to explain that the reason I did not like playing Swampert is just because it fell so far below what my expectations for it were. It is, after all, the speedrunning Pokemon in Emerald version. With a lot more experience coming back to these 3 today, I expect that the results are going to be very different. So let's get into it. These are the rules. You can find them in the description if you want to reference them later. All 3 of the starters have medium slow growth rates. They have the abilities Overgrow, Blaze, and Torrent, which raises the power of their primary type of move when they're below 33% health. It's pretty good, and it's an ability that I always forget in these solo challenges, so if I'm ever saying something like, wow, I rolled better damage, no, it's probably because one of these abilities activated and gave me more damage. I'm sure all of you will catch moments like this and give me a nice boost with the YouTube algorithm. Now onto base stats. Sceptile has 70 HP, 85 attack, 65 defense, 120 speed, 105 special attack, and 85 special defense. So in summary, it is a fast special attacker with not great physical stats, but that's okay because it only has one type, Grass, and in Generation 3, this typing deals exclusively special damage. Blaziken, on the other hand, is far more balanced. 80 HP and speed, 70 defense and special defense, and 120 attack and 110 special attack. It has 2 typings, fire and fighting of course. It is the first of a series of firefighting starters, which really got old by the time we were going into Generation 6. I have to say Delphox was a nice relief, although it's not the best design for a Pokemon. That said, when I saw Incineroar's leaked design before Generation 7, I was terrified that it was going to be another firefighting type. Anyway, back to Generation 3. Blaziken's design with base stats is a nice complement to its 2 typings. Fire is special and fighting is physical. And if you haven't seen any of my Generation 3 videos, the fighting type is fantastic in these games, and I know that it's going to give Blaziken a significant edge today. Okay, now over to Swampert. It has 100 HP, 110 attack, 90 defense, 60 speed, 85 special attack, and 90 special defense. By far, it's the most defensive Pokemon of the 3. It's a physical attacker, which is a little bit weird when its primary typing is water and it deals special damage. Luckily, its secondary typing, ground, deals physical damage. I would say of the 3 Pokemon, it initially appears that Swampert is the worst designed for a solo challenge. It has low speed, which is always a liability, and then it also has a typing that has a 4 times weakness to grass moves. The thing is with Swampert, it's very lucky because there aren't very many prominent grass types in playthroughs. Although, I will remind you all that the champion does have Ludicolo, one of my least favorite AI-controlled Pokemon in any main series game. Okay, now let's get into these playthroughs. With Sceptile, I went with a rash nature. This improves its special attack and lowers its special defense. This is my standard play in solo challenges just because Steven Stone is mostly a physical attacker, and I don't want to have lower physical defense at the very end of the game. If you go back and watch my previous Sceptile video, you will find that this Pokemon really doesn't struggle in a playthrough of Emerald version until the very end of the game with Steven Stone. Well, there's one other trainer along the way that obviously is going to cause problems, especially with a rash nature. In terms of type effectiveness, the grass typing is weak to flying, poison, bug, fire, and ice moves. Luckily, Glacia has a ton of water type Pokemon on her team, and just for coverage against her Glalie as well as Steven Stone's steel type Pokemon, I have given Sceptile Hidden Power Fire, which is the main thing that I lacked last time around. In the early game, this Pokemon's really good. It starts with Pound, Leer, Absorb, and Quick Attack. Through level up, it really only gets one notable move, which is Leaf Blade, its signature move, move. It has a base power of 70, 100% accuracy, 15 PP, and an increased critical hit ratio, meaning it crits 1 in 4 times in Generation 3. By the way, starting in only Generation 4, Leaf Blade's power was increased from 70 to 90. I wish I had that Sceptile today. Anyway, at base 70 power, it is still a fantastic grass-type move. Through TM and HM, Sceptile gets access to a lot of good moves. Dragon Claw, Giga Drain, Solar Beam, Iron Tail, Earthquake, Dig, Brick Break, Rock Tomb, Aerial Ace, and Rock Smash, which can sometimes be helpful against Watson's Magneton. It also gets access to a lot of tutor moves, but so many of these are walled off in the Battle Frontier, moves like Swords Dance and Thunder Punch, so I won't be using them today. An advantage for Sceptile in the early game is the fact that it also gets access to the Bullet Seed TM, which is the first TM available to the player. I'm going to teach that right now. Then inside of Roxanne's gym, I fight the trainers because they give really quick experience. After that, because of the medium slow growth rate, Sceptile is level 13, so now let's take on Roxanne. Geodude 1, one-shot with Absorb. Geodude number 2, one-shot with Absorb. That leaves only the Nose Pass. This Pokemon has a strangely high special defense stat for a rock type. I'm going to be using Bullet Seed here because if I get a 3 to 4 to 5 hit, I might knock the Nose Pass out without it using its Oran Berry or Roxanne using a potion, which would speed my progress in the battle up. And while the Nose Pass does use its Oran Berry, I then get a Bullet Seed that hits 4 times in a row, knocking it out so she doesn't use any potions. Sceptile gets a first split of 5 minutes and 35 seconds. Blaziken's early game is not quite as good. You would think the fighting type would give it an advantage against Roxanne, but it doesn't start with any fighting type moves. At level 1, it gets Fire Punch, Scratch, Growl, Focus Energy, and Ember. Because it has 5 level 1 moves, it does not get Fire Punch the first of these, which is kind of unfortunate. Through level up, it gets Focus Energy and then Ember again at level 13, only getting Double Kick at level 16. It gets Peck for coverage against Brawly at level 17, and then beyond there, its moves kind of go downhill until its signature move at level 36, which is Blaze Kick. It has a base power of 85 and an accuracy of 90. Overall, I think it's a less useful signature move when compared with Sceptile Leaf Blade. Blaziken also gets Sky Uppercut, which is very similar to Blaze Kick at level 59. However, I don't think this move is going to be that useful because it has 90% accuracy, and using something inconsistent is just generally not very solid in solo challenges. I think there will be better options for Blaziken. And speaking of better options, let's go through the TM and HM Learn set. It gets Bulk Up, one of the most fantastic moves in Generation 3. This is the reason fighting types are so good. So to boost the power of physical moves, then Blaziken's going to be able to use things like Earthquake, Dig, Brick Break, Rock Tomb, and Aerial Ace to great effect. Everything else on its set is kind of irrelevant, even the fire type moves like Flamethrower and Fire Blast. I have a feeling that this fire type is not going to be using fire type moves once it gets past Brawly. In the early game, I do take my time though. I'm going to fight the majority of the trainers, if not all of the trainers. Inside of Roxanne's gym, I level up to 13 before her, but I didn't feel confident going up against the rock types using Ember. While the Geodude line is essentially weak to Ember because they have trash special defense, the Nose Pass is a completely different story and it does have Rock Tomb. So I continue my training on Route 116, leveling Blaziken up to level 16 where I can learn Double Kick. This gives it super effective damage against Roxanne. I'm able to one-shot the first Geodude. I did take my time setting up Focus Energy once. I don't think I really need it, but I might as well. Blaziken levels up to 17 after her second Geodude, where I teach it Peck. This will be useful for Brawly, like I said. I teach it in the place of Focus Energy, and then move on to the Nose Pass. Double Kick gets a critical hit, and as a result, her ace goes down to a single hit. Because of the early game training, Blaziken's time against Roxanne isn't quite as good as Sceptile's. It gets a split of 7 minutes. In the early game, I play Swampert very similarly to Sceptile. It doesn't get access to a TM like Bullet Seed, but I can grab the Quick Claw inside of the Trainer School. Since Swampert is fairly slow, I think this item is going to be clutch for it throughout the playthrough. Inside the gym, I fight the trainers, leveling up to 13, and then I take on Roxanne. One-shot both Geodudes. The Nose Pass takes longer to defeat with Water Gun, but in the end, Swampert comes through with a victory. It earns itself a Roxanne split of 4 minutes and 56 seconds. Right now that puts it in the lead ahead of Sceptile by a small amount of time, whereas Blaziken is in a distant third place. Swampert levels up quickly to 16, and in this case it learns the move Mudshot. It has 55 base power and 95% accuracy, plus it lowers the target's speed, which is pretty helpful for Swampert, and it's going to be clutch against the rival's Grovyle coming up soon. In Emerald version, there's an optional battle against Brendan in Rustboro City. I don't want to fight him here though. If I can avoid grass types, I will, and in this case I can. On Dewford Island, I grab the Silk Scarf, deliver the letter to Stephen Stone, and then head into the gym and fight all of the fighting type trainers here to gain experience. I want to level up as much as possible during this section of the game so that I can be prepared for the mandatory rival before Mauville City. In my previous playthrough with Swampert, I made some mistakes against him and I wasn't prepared for that battle and then had too many resets. This time around though, I'm going to be prepared and hopefully I'll defeat him on my first attempt. Plus the extra training here synergizes well to make Brawly a little bit easier. Machop is first. I go for Mud Shot. It does way more than half. As a result, he uses a super potion, which is pretty good. If he uses these earlier into the battle, it's always an advantage for the player. I can then use Water Gun to two-shot the Machop consistently and move on to the Metatite. Its only damage dealing move is Focus Punch, as you well know, so as long as I attack with Water Gun, it's never going to do damage. That leads to the Makuhita. Mud Shot does more than half. It chooses Bulk Up, and then after a Citrus Berry, I use Water Gun, knocking out in 2 hits. Okay, the rival's coming up next, so let's talk about him. The mistake that I made last time was not picking up the soft sand on Slateport Beach. This improves the damage of Mud Shot, allowing it to two-shot the Grovyle. But in order to do that consistently, I think I'm going to need level 23. In order to get there, I grind against a bunch of the trainers on the beach as well as in the beach house, earning myself some soda pop. Once I defeat the trainers in the museum, I am level 23, and I think at this point I am overtraining, because I go into the trick house, collect the rare candy there, and I also battle trainers in the surrounding region, leveling up to 26 before I finally take on the rival. If I lose, I'm going to be so disappointed because I put in an extra 3 levels of time. Slugma, of course, is a simple one-hit with Water Gun. Then I use Mud Shot on the Grovyle. This lowers its speed and does more than half, allowing Swampert to attack twice in a row, and that's enough to knock out his grass type. Wingull's the only Pokemon left. To make a small mistake here, choosing Mud Shot. Oh well. Now, let's head into Mauville City. For most water types in Hoenn, this is the place in the game that you are most scared of. Watson is the second best gym leader in these games. He is only weaker than Tate and Liza, and that is exclusively because of the format that I'm playing. In solo challenges, defeating 2 Pokemon at once is harder than defeating 1 Pokemon at once. I think if Watson was a double battle, this fight would be harder than Tate and Liza. I have a hunch here that the developers realized that Swampert was really going to struggle and give players that chose it a terrible time around this section of the game, especially because there aren't really a lot of ground types available to the player. Actually, now that I think about it, are there any ground types available to the player prior to Watson? Let's check. Route 101, no ground types. Route 102, 103, and 104 are all the same story. Route 116 is where things change because you can get access to a Nincada, although I do want to mention it evolves at level 20, so if you evolved it, then it would lose its ground type and become a flying type, which is weak to Watson. I guess potentially Shedinja could be useful against him, but I do want to mention the fact that moves like Supersonic will still be able to knock it out. The first and only proper ground type that you could use for Watson is Geodude, which can be found inside of Granite Cave. That is not a lot of options for players going up against a powerful electric type specialist. So there's my evidence as to why Swampert was designed with the ground type in combination with the water type. You can kind of see this design philosophy playing out with Blaziken as well. Once you evolve your Torchic, it gains the fighting type and then it's strong against Roxanne. I did some training around Mauville City, but not that much with Swampert because I don't think it really needs it. So now let's take on Watson. Mudshot one-shots the Voltorb, one-shots the Electrike, and of course one-shots the Magneton because it does 4 times damage. That leaves only Manectric. It's pretty incompetent against ground types. The only move it can use for damage is Quick Attack, and so it's trying to set up with Howl first. However, Mudshot just comes through and gets another one hit. So Swampert has an incredibly easy time against Watson. It earns itself a third split of 20 minutes and 29 seconds. Who among you, when you were a kid, also chose Trico? I did, and then I got a Grovyle, and by the time I arrived in Dewford Island, I was really sad because Brawly beat me over and over and over again. At level 16, all 3 of the starters learn another attacking move, and Sceptile gets Fury Cutter, which is not helpful against fighting types. I do complete the optional rival battle just for a little bit more experience to give Sceptile a higher level by the time I make it to Brawly. The next move it learns is Pursuit, which is not very helpful. I teach this in the place of Fury Cutter, but overall I don't think it's going to see any play. On Duford Island, I grab the Silk Scarf, and then I start some optional training on the beach. This is where I realized I had forgotten an item that would have helped me when I was a kid, and I never found it because it's walled off in Petalburg Forest behind some cut trees. I have to make the long boat trip all the way back here, cut down the tree, and then grab the Miracle Seed, which is going to improve the damage of grass-type moves by 10%. Just like with Swampert, I battle all the trainers inside the gym to level up as much as possible. This brings Sceptile up to level 19 before I'm ready to take on Brawly. My damage here is not great. Bullet Seed with a 3-hit does just over half to the Machop. Then it crits with Karate Chop, doing about half to Sceptile before I move on to the Metatite. Luckily, I can use Absorb to heal back my health here, especially if Brawly uses a Super Potion. But when I want him to, he doesn't. So, time to take on the Makuhita. I get a lucky critical hit when using Bullet Seed, doing more than half to it with only a 2-hit. However, the fighting type starts doing what fighting types do best in Generation 3, setting up with Bulk Up. Makuhita eats a Citrus Berry, gaining back more health. I go for Bullet Seed and it hits once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and 5 times, knocking out Brawly's ace. Okay, perfect. That's what Sceptile needed. Granted, I'm a fully evolved Pokemon. I didn't think I was going to have too many problems here. I could have had 1 or 2 resets though, especially if the Makuhita got set up. On Slayport Beach, I grab myself the Soft Sand, which will be useful later in the playthrough when Sceptile gets access to Earthquake. Then I do a bunch of training. Just like with Swampert, this is to prepare for the rival who now has a Combusken. Unlike with Mudshot, I don't have a move that's particularly useful here, but what I am relying on is the fact that the Combusken likes to go for Focus Energy. Provided it doesn't get a critical hit with Ember, I should be able to knock it out in 3 turns or 4 turns using Quick Attack. And after I start dealing damage to it, it's going to be a 3-hit, so I was feeling pretty confident. It uses Ember. In this case, it doesn't get a critical hit, so Sceptile survives and knocks out his ace. I finish off the Lombre easily and head into Mauville City. Well, I almost make it to Mauville City because along the way I fight Fisherman Dale. I thought this battle was going to be fine, but I was really wrong because he has Tentacool. I choose Absorb against it because it's a grass type move, but I shouldn't have done this because Tentacool has really good special defense. Then it uses Supersonic. Sceptile hits itself a ridiculous number of times, gets poisoned along the way, and because of the double status condition, I am not able to heal on the Wailmer with Absorb, and Sceptile faints. I am not going to battle the rival again, so I'm going to take a blackout here. It's pretty annoying. Anyways, back to Slayport City. I have to walk all the way back, fight Fisherman Dale again just for revenge. This time I use Quick Attack on the Tentacools, and it one-shots both of them. Okay, let's talk about some of the trainers around Mauville City. Specifically, this Aroma lady. She has 2 Roselia. Now, I'm drawing your attention to her because these Pokemon give special attack EVs. She's a mandatory battle, but there are also a lot of other trainers with Roselia that you can fight for more special attack EVs in this area. And after talking to Ike the Killer and seeing a bunch of his results in Emerald version, I really do think battling them makes the most sense with special attacking Pokemon. During this, Sceptile levels up to 29 and learns Leaf Blade in the place of Bullet Seed. With Sceptile, I also go overboard on training here, but this is all towards a purpose, because I need to prepare for Flannery, who is coming up right after Watson. So while this might be overkill for the very next gym leader, it's definitely going to be important for what's coming up next, because last time around I needed a ridiculous level to beat her. The first time I needed 42. Anyway, first we need to defeat Watson. I go into this fight at level 33. Leaf Blade is able to one-hit the Voltorb, the Electrike, and then 2-shot the Magneton, and because I'm holding a Cherry Berry, I don't have paralysis by the time I make it to the Manectric. It is going to paralyze me with Thunder Wave because Watson always prioritizes speed control when his Pokemon are slower than yours. That doesn't matter though, because Sceptile is going to survive long enough to get in 1 more Leaf Blade. So Watson's out of the way. With that, I earn myself the 3rd badge. This gives a speed boost. So Sceptile is basically faster than absolutely everything now. That is one disadvantage that it has though. Both Swampert and Blaziken are mostly physical attackers, whereas the badge boost from Roxanne's badge is not really helping Sceptile because it's boosting its attack, and I have to wait all the way until I defeat Tate and Liza to get a special attack boost. This is very unfortunate because coming up next is Flannery, and I could use a special attack boost against her. While Leaf Blade is not very effective, I still think it's going to be my best go-to move against her. We will do damage calculations on this later into the video just so that I can prove that to you. Still, Sceptile does have other options available to it. I can pick up the Secret Power TM for a more powerful normal type move, which I put in the place of of Pursuit. Like I said, it's not useful. Then in Fall Arbor Town, I grab the TM for Dig, which is going to be super effective against Flannery's Pokemon, so I teach that in the place of Absorb. At the top of Mount Chimney, I have to take on Maxie. This fight's pretty easy because Intimidate doesn't mess up Sceptile. I one-shot the Mightyena using Leaf Blade, next he sends in Camerupt, and I have a choice. Do I use Dig or do I use Leaf Blade? In this case, I think Leaf Blade makes more sense since the Camerupt does have Magnitude. Also, it's a Fire Ground type, so I do neutral damage and I get a critical hit, knocking out his ace in a single turn. Last is Zubat, and Secret Power gets the one-shot. Okay, one more thing to do before I go and face Flannery. I make my way all the way back to Fall Arbor Town, exchange the Meteorite for the return TM, and teach this to Sceptile in the place of Secret Power. It improves my effective power by 13 points up to 83, so it has the potential to give me a little bit more damage against Flannery's Pokemon if I need it. Okay, so now at level 38, let's see if Sceptile can do this. Numel is first. I go for Dig and one-shot her lead. That's a good way to start this off. Next is Camerupt. This one does not have Magnitude, so I can go underground and use Dig against it for super effective damage. But this is not able to one-shot, so the Camerupt lands an Overheat, bringing Sceptile down to 1/3 health. I use Dig again for damage, and this is objectively a mistake. Flannery chooses a Hyper Potion. As a result, my next Dig does not get the knockout, and Camerupt finishes Sceptile. That's the first reset of this video. On my next attempt, I get lucky with a critical hit against Camerupt, so it goes down to 1 hit, and I have full health for the remaining 2 Pokemon. Dig one-shots the Slugma, and then all that's left is Torkoal. It sets up with Sunny Day when I choose Dig. My move does less than half, and then it uses Overheat, burning away Sceptile. Now, Flannery has some strange AI quirks. One of them is that she doesn't like to use Overheat if she doesn't see that she's going to knock your Pokemon out. And I think that Torkoal is not going to knock out Sceptile in 1 hit at level 38. What this means is that it's going to roll between Sunny Day and Body Slam. That's what happens here when I go underground with Dig, so I deal damage to it before it sets up the sun. That means I can get a second Dig off, avoiding its Overheat. And I get very lucky with a critical hit, knocking the Torkoal out before it chooses Overheat. So I didn't have to wait for her to miss with her powerful Fire-type move. Sceptile comes through with a victory at level 39 and only 2 resets. This went very well. Okay, time for the Fire Chicken. Let's see how Blaziken does in this section of the game. After Roxanne, I teach it Rock Tomb, one of my least favorite moves, but it's still helpful for coverage here and there. I skip the optional rival battle and then head to Dewford Island. Since I did a bunch of optional training before Roxanne, I'm gonna skip all of the trainers inside of Brawly's gym and go straight for him. Because when I defeat him, I get Bulk Up, which is one of the best moves for a fighting type. I want it as fast as is possible. Up first is Machop. I can use Peck here for super effective damage, but I do want to point out the fact that Double Kick's base power is 45, and that's per hit, and it gets 2 of them every turn. So that's an effective power of 90, whereas Peck's effective power is 70. So here I should be using Double Kick. That said, though, it doesn't really matter. Machop goes down without problems. Next is Meditite. I can just Peck away, and eventually it will faint. It's a Psychic type, so using Double Kick doesn't make sense here. Last is Makuhita. Again, I should be going for Double Kick. It chooses Bulk Up. After a single Peck, I am not doing enough damage to knock it out in 2 turns, and it also eats its Citrus Berry, going back to green health. As a result, it continues setting up, getting a second Bulk Up, and then it chooses Reversal when it's at low red health. It completely steamrolls Blaziken. Alright, not my best play, I will admit. I come back. In this case, I am still using Peck, which is the wrong choice. Anyway, this time it works out for me. Blaziken survives the Reversal on low red health, uses 1 more Peck, and Brawly's ace goes down. At least my mistakes didn't cause major delays. I teach Bulk Up right away in the place of Ember. I don't want to have access to any more special moves. Here's the thing about Blaziken. It might be a fire type, and I tend to dislike them in solo challenges, but the reason it's going to do very well in this run is not because of that typing. It's exclusively because it's a fighting type. The fire type only serves to hold Blaziken back, and I hope to prove that to you throughout the remainder of this video. My moveset now is all physical. Double Kick, Rock Tomb, Peck, and Bulk Up. I have Roxanne's Badge Boost, which is increasing my attack stat, which is already increased by my nature, which is naughty. This lowers my special defense, and I don't think Blaziken is going to need special defense. You might be worried about Wallace, and that's really fair. I am also worried about Wallace, but increasing my special defense by 10% is probably not going to be what I need to make him easy. I'm going to rely on Bulk Up, and I think it's going to be enough once we get there. Unlike the other two, Blaziken goes into the battle against Rival 2 at a much lower level, 20 21. This is because he leads with a Lombre when he has the Marshtomp team, and that essentially just gives me free setup with bulk up. If the Lombre uses Growl to lower my attack, I can just take longer here, setting up more times. At +1, I figured I had enough attack. I go for it against the Marshtomp, and it doesn't look like it's gonna one-shot. Well, the second hit with double kick gets a crit, and with that, the Marshtomp goes down. Overall, a really simple battle. I'm going to continue speeding through the game and go up against Watson at only level 24. I chose to set up here against the Voltorb, but this is objectively a mistake. I should be setting up against the Electrike because its moves cannot paralyze you. The only way it paralyzes you if you attack into its static. And Blaziken has a way around that if it really wants. It can choose Rock Tomb. But I do everything wrong here. I knock out the Voltorb at +2 and then attack into the Electrike with double kick, activating static. This kind of play hurts to watch. At least I have a Cherry Berry and the Magneton isn't faster, plus double kick one-shots. That leaves only the Manectric, and I figured here, even once Blaziken gets paralyzed because it's slightly slower, I'm still going to have enough damage to take care of it. And I was right, double kick gets the job done. Over the next section of the game, there are some moveset upgrades for Blaziken that have potential. Secret Power could be better than Peck, because Peck is just not very good outside of the early game. Also, I could teach Dig for super effective damage against Flannery, and that move's also really helpful against Norman, who's just around the corner. Here's the thing though, every time I teach a move, I have to open my inventory, find the right bag pocket, then use the TM, select which move I want to delete. There's always the chance there that I make a mistake and click on double kick and unlearn my fighting type move. I know that seems silly, but it's really not when you're playing these challenges at 4 times speed. Mistakes happen very quickly, so one small lapse of focus and everything can fall apart. Plus, there is a time cost to teaching new moves. With Blaziken, I just don't think it needs these. So let's continue with the run and face Maxie at the top of Mount Chimney. This should be a really simple battle, but then the Camerupt gets magnitude 10. Are you kidding me? Anyways, it one-shots Blaziken. When the Camerupt is not choosing magnitude, it instead chooses moves like Tackle, doing almost nothing, and then Blaziken wins. Flannery is really simple when you have access to a setup move. The Nummel is completely incompetent. Its moveset is Overheat, Takedown, Magnitude, and Sunny Day. However, its stats are just awful, and even if it's attacking with Magnitude, it's just not going to do enough damage because I'm setting up with bulk up, increasing my defense. I go all the way to +3. I figured this would be enough, and then I start double kicking my way through the remainder of her Pokemon. I 1-hit the Slugma, 2-hit the Camerupt, which is a 1-turn, and then I move on to the Torkoal, by far her most defensive Pokemon. In this case, double kick is not able to knock it out in 1 turn, but it just chooses Body Slam, and with my defense boosted, it does very little damage. Things slow down, Flannery uses a potion, but eventually Blaziken comes through with the win. With Swampert, I make the moveset updates. Secret Power in the place of Tackle, and Dig in the place of Mudslap. Maxie is easy, and so is Flannery, as you would expect. I take some time backtracking to Fallarbor Town to grab the return TM here with Swampert, and I do want to mention that unless you're having problems against Flannery and you want to use this move against her, I don't really think this move makes sense. In most cases, picking up return after you get access to Fly or when you arrive in Pacific Town is by far the more concise choice. Anyways, having it is helpful, so I'll teach it in the place of Secret Power for a slightly higher effective power right now, but overall I think this is the slower and wrong choice. Okay, now time to head to Petalburg City to take on Norman. I expect that this fight is going to be fairly straightforward because Swampert has access to Dig. Although, I want to point something out to you. The water type is slow, and even with the speed boost from Watson's badge, Swampert only has 66 speed here. This is an unfortunate number to go up against Norman with. I am speed tied with the Vigoroth, and I am slower than both the Linoon and the Slacking. Even though I'm leveling up in the middle of the battle to 35, increasing my speed stat, this does not give me the outspeed. By the time I arrive at the Slacking, I wasn't thinking clearly. There is an obvious solution here, and you might see it. Instead, what I'm going for is Return, which makes no sense. I should be choosing Dig other than that, but then once the Slacking is loafing around, I go for Dig. This is not aligning the turns properly, so once I pop up out of the ground, then the Slacking has a chance to attack and Swampert faints. Actually, it took a little bit longer than that. I survived for a surprising amount of time before the Slacking finally attacked with Feint Attack and knocked Swampert out. I go back through the gym fighting the trainers to level up to 36 to get the speed I need to move first against the slacking, but defeating everyone here doesn't give me the experience that Swampert needs. So I just try again, and I'm still fumbling here. Using Water Gun to avoid counter and then dig on the second turn is not the choice that I should be making. Dig first turn to avoid damage from slacking, but this won't work if you're not faster. What I need to be doing is using Mud Shot against the slacking to lower its speed. If I did that, then I could consistently use dig to avoid damage from it. Anyways, I'm so sad I didn't figure this out. I instead used 2 rare candies to level Swampert up to 37 so that I outspeed the slacking and then can just use dig in a brain dead way to knock it out. Not my finest of moments, but also not my worst. I'm known for overlooking plays like this. In the end, outspeeding the slacking is all that I need, and this time I get the victory. With Norman defeated, Swampert's moveset is going to dramatically improve. I can teach Surf in the place of Water Gun, and this is the reason I'm running a Rash Nature, because I think Surf is Swampert's go-to move, at least for the majority of the mid-game. Also, using it outside of battle is helpful now because I can go to the abandoned ship and pick up the Ice Beam TM, which is going to be extremely helpful against Winona, the next gym leader. It also helps against the rival's Grovyle. Now I can simply one-shot grass types. But don't worry, I can't one-shot Pelipers. This thing is so frustrating. I freeze it in this case, which feels good, but then it defrosts right away and attacks with Wing Attack. Pelipper, always annoying. At least it didn't use Supersonic. Moving on to the Fort Tree City gym. In here, we get a speed check. This Camper Flint, has a Swellow with 82 speed. This is one of the fastest Pokemon in most playthroughs, and in this case, Swampert is not faster than it. Hilariously though, this is the fastest Pokemon in the entire gym, so Swampert is still going to outspeed all of the Pokemon on Winona's team. Swablu's first, I one-shot with Ice Beam. Tropius goes down to an Ice Beam, obviously. Next is Pelipper. It is really annoying. It uses Protect, then it uses Supersonic, confusing Swampert before I knock it out. Okay, at least I snap out of confusion against the Skarmory and I can use Surf. In this case, she heals the Skarmory with a Hyper Potion, and then my Surf gets a critical hit, knocking it out. Last is Altaria. Ice Beam does 4 times damage, and with that, Winona is defeated easily. The Castform you receive at the Weather Institute is holding the Mystic Water, so I'm going to use that as my held item with Swampert for the next section. One thing I should mention is in double battles, Surf does not deal full damage to both opposing Pokemon. Its damage is reduced by 50% for each target. So essentially, the single target damage is spread out across 2 Pokemon. This is going to be relevant very soon because while this double battle is not an issue, Tate and Liza might be. Upon arriving in Lily Cove City, I fight the rival to gain access to the department store. Ice Beam is useful here against both of his grass types, so Swampert doesn't have issues. I purchase 5 Calcium to improve special attack and 1 Carbos to improve speed. Also on the roof, I talk to the move tutor and teach Substitute in the place of Dig. So its 3 other moves right now are Return, Ice Beam, and Surf. One small frustration with Swampert is that it doesn't get Earthquake until level 52, which is still a little bit far away, and that move's also not going to be useful against Tate and Liza, since they have Xatu, a flying Pokemon, and all 3 of their other Pokemon have Levitate. And that's really frustrating because Earthquake, unlike Surf, does not have its damage halved when used in a double battle or a multi-battle. Instead, it deals full damage to every other Pokemon on the field. With Substitute, Swampert's not going to have any problems against Maxie, although I don't even set it up, I just sweep his team. In this case, I get confused. Maybe I should have held a Person Berry. It doesn't really matter though. The Crobat goes down to 2 Ice Beams, and the Camerupt falls to a single Surf. I grab Rest, Crush Mat, and the Aqua Hideout, and then I explore Shoal Cave to pick up a rare candy. I am grabbing the maximum number that I can with each one of these starters in my first playthrough to play as conservatively as possible. Upon arriving in Pacific Log Town, I pick up the other TM for Rest, and then I head back to Moss Deep City to take on Tate and Liza. Before this battle though, my Swampert has reached level 48, so I think I'm going to use rare candies now to boost it to a higher level before I take on the notoriously difficult double battle. I target level 55, and on the way I decide to teach Earthquake in the place of Return. Normal type moves are not very useful against Tate and Liza, they have 2 rock types, and I'm probably going to be relying on Surf even though its damage is reduced. It is still super effective against 3 out of their 4 Pokemon. Okay, let's see how the notoriously difficult double battle goes. Turn 1, Surf does a ton of damage to Claydol, bringing it to red health, and more than half to the Xatu. I sustain a small amount of damage from Earthquake. Tate and Liza use a Hyper Potion on the Claydol, but using Surf again, I can bring it back down to low health and knock out the Xatu. They send in Soul Rock, use another Hyper Potion. By the way, they have 4 of these, which can get annoying. However, I'm consistently using Surf, so I'm bringing the Claydol back down to low health, and I knock out the Soul Rock in the process. Lunatone comes in, they use another Hyper Potion. Surf brings the Claydol back down to red health, along with the Lunatone. It eats a Citrus Berry, they Hyper Potion the Claydol one more time, but I'm still gonna knock it out in 2 turns. Lunatone falls to the next Surf, that leaves only Claydol, but it's not doing anything. The final double battle in the playthrough is right after this. This should have been easier for me, because I could use Earthquake here. Yeah, it'll knock out Steven's Pokemon until he sends in Skarmory, but that doesn't really matter. That said, I am using Surf. I don't know if it's a bad play. Either way, it doesn't matter to the outcome of the battle just because Substitute is so fantastic here anyway. I grab myself the Earthquake TM during the plot, finish off Archie, who is really easy, and with him out of the way, now it's time to take on the last gym leader, Juan. Love Disc is first, set up Substitute, tank a Water Pulse, then use Earthquake to knock it out. Earthquake one-shots the following Whiscash, the Celio, the Crawdaunt, and I make it to the Kingdra. It survives, sets up Double Team, Juan uses a Hyper Potion, Earthquake misses, then my Earthquake hits, bringing it down to red health. He Hyper Potions again, I miss, it's setting up Double Team. This is all really frustrating, but eventually Earthquake just hits a second time and his ace goes down. The only reason he ever wins is because of Double Team. Before the league, I'm gonna do some errands. One of them involves beating up Wally inside the cave. His team is really bad. After that, I go back to Sutopolis City, grab the Brick Break TM, which is gonna be helpful against Sydney. I also go to the Move Deleter to get rid of Surf, because it's not particularly helpful during the Elite Four. I teach Brick Break in its place, and now Swampert is ready for the final trainers of the game. Where Swampert struggled with speed against Norman, Sceptile has no issues. Leaf Blade goes on an absolute spree, knocking out the Spinda and the Vigoroth in single hits. The Linoon does survive, but this actually gives me an opportunity to deplete all of his Hyper Potions here before I make it to the Slacking. Leaf Blade is special damage, so it can't be countered. I could also go for Dig and just get a free win, but I decide to go for the Grass type move for more damage and hopefully a faster victory. After all, if I can survive 1 hit, then I will get 3 turns in a row to attack, which is what happens. I survive the Facade, then I attack with Leaf Blade, doing just less than half. The second one, though, gets a critical hit and Norman is defeated. The rival before Fort Tree City, I think I should have used Dig against his Combusken for a one-shot. Return gets a 2-hit, and I do have my accuracy lowered by Sand Attack. In the end, it doesn't matter. Now with Swampert, I didn't mention Hidden Power. I gave it Hidden Power Grass, but with Sceptile, I'm going to mention this move because it's very important. I pick up Hidden Power Fire now by answering this old woman's questions. By the way, you don't need to do this. You can go to Slateport City and buy the TM earlier in the game. I teach Hidden Power in the place of Quick Attack, equip the Charcoal in the place of the Silk Scarf, and then I go up against Winona. Sceptile doesn't have a great matchup here. Return isn't able to one-shot the Swablu, so I'm exposed to Perish Song. Luckily, she doesn't choose it. Next is Pelipper. It gets really annoying. As usual, confusing Sceptile. I deal a lot of damage to myself in confusion, and I have roughly 1/4 health left over for the remainder of the fight. Hidden Power Fire is good against the Tropius, as well as the Skarmory. Both of them are 1-hits, but then Altaria comes in, Return does less than half, and it chooses Aerial Ace, knocking Sceptile out. I make it back to the Altaria. This time around, I just get lucky. I get a critical hit turn 1. Altaria sets up with Dragon Dance, but this doesn't make it close to Sceptile's speed. While Winona does use a Hyper Potion, I get to attack twice in a row, and Sceptile has full health. And I believe this is what's making Altaria set up with Dragon Dance. It chooses the move again, giving me a free knockout. Brief moment, gotta insult the rival. This guy's really bad in Emerald version. There are rarely Pokemon that struggle against him. The only fight in the entire playthrough that ever causes issues is Rival 2 just before Mauville City. We're past that, so he's easy now. I head into the department store and purchase some vitamins for Sceptile. In this case, 6 calcium to improve its special attack. Just like Swampert, I go to the top floor and teach Substitute. This is by far the best move in Generation 3. It makes the fight against Maxie really easy because his Mightyena can't use Swagger or Scare scary face to do anything to your Pokemon, it very rarely chooses Takedown, and it only prioritizes Roar if you have +3 or greater in one of your stats. Leaf Blade knocks out the Mightyena, Return critical hits the Crobat for a one-shot, and then the Camerupt that's last, even though it's a fire type, it does not have any fire type moves, and after Amnesia, I just get a critical hit. In Pacific Log Town, if you surf down the rapids on the southern side of the town, you will arrive at this trainer, Fisherman Ronald. He has 1 Magikarp as his lead and 5 Gyarados. Fighting him is incredible experience. With Sceptile, I'm using Leaf Blade, which is special damage, so I don't need to set up Substitute, but you can do that on the Magikarp before all the Gyarados, making him still fast and possible with physical attackers. Unlike with Swampert, I do not want to use rare candies before Tate and Liza. This is because I'm really worried about Steven Stone. I need to ensure that Sceptile gets to a high level to defeat him, so I'm going to save my rare candies for now and see if it's possible at level 53. Turn 1, Substitute because I know the Claydol is going to go for Earthquake. Xatu goes for Psychic, knocking out the Zigzagoon, and Earthquake does not break my Substitute. Then I can use Leaf Blade to knock out the Claydol in a single hit. Solrock comes in next, Psychic breaks my Substitute, and I use Leaf Blade to knock out the Sun Pokemon because I don't want to get hit by Flamethrower. Lunatone's next, I continue my spree with Leaf Blade against it, leaving the Xatu in place. Since it's setting up with Calm Mind, I don't want to use a special move against it, I'm going to use Return instead. It does more than half. Xatu continues setting up with Calm Mind, giving me the knockout. Okay, if you're worried about Archie's Crobat, you really shouldn't be. This Pokemon very rarely causes issues. I actually find that Maxie's Crobat is more of an issue, and that's really only if you're underspeeding it and weak to flying type moves. In this case, Archie just slows me down using a bunch of potions. Okay, Juan, yeah, I'm gonna spam Leaf Blade throughout this entire fight, and I assume I'm gonna one-hit all of his Pokemon with the exception of Kingdra. It comes in third, Leaf Blade does not get the one hit, it sets up Double Team, but luckily I do not miss. I get Brick Break, I defeat Wally, and then I do something special and exclusive to Sceptile. I head into Meteor Falls and explore the back chamber, which requires me to pass 1 optional trainer. This is so Sceptile can have super effective damage against Drake. Okay, Tate and Liza haven't been a problem in this playthrough so far, but what about Blaziken, the fighting type? Well, first we have to get through Norman, and surprisingly here things did not go my way. I set up once on the Spinda, I figured this was gonna be enough, and it looks like it is. I knock out the Vigoroth and the Linoon. Then Slacking comes in, I go for Double Kick, hoping to get the one-shot, but Blaziken does not have enough damage. As a result, Slacking uses Counter and Blaziken faints. This is a silly way to lose in this fight. On the first turn against Slacking, just set up with Bulk Up, improving your stats more and avoiding Counter. Then choose Double Kick on the next turn and knock out the Slacking in 1 hit. The rival before Fortree City, set up on the Lombre just like before, then knock out the Marshtomp easily. Inside the Fortree City gym, things line up really well for Blaziken because it reaches level 36 where it can learn Blaze Kick. I said I didn't really want to use special moves much with this thing, but I think it has a niche here to defeat Winona's Skarmory. I didn't want to play risky against the Swablu at the beginning of the battle because it has Perish Song. Instead, I just go for Double Kick and knock it out in 1 turn. Next, she sends in Skarmory, so I go for Blaze Kick, and this is powerful enough to get the one-shot. Tropius comes in next. It does have a flying type move, Aerial Ace, but it's not very good using it, and it also likes to set up with Sunny Day, giving me a little bit more time to use Bulk Up. At +2, I choose Blaze Kick, knock out the Grass type, and move on to Pelipper. It actually does not use Protect, and I knock it out in a single turn. Alright, that feels good. Last is Altaria. I go for Return. It does more than half. The Dragon type sets up with Dragon Dance, chooses Earthquake on the next turn after outspeeding Blaziken. It does a lot of damage, but not enough. With Winona out of the way, we now need to start thinking about Tate and Liza. Inside the department store, I buy 4 protein to improve my physical attack, and 4 carbos to improve Blaziken's speed, because it's not really that fast. Just like with the other 2 Pokemon, I go to the roof and teach Substitute. Right now, my moveset is Double Kick, Return, Substitute, and Bulk Up. But now we need to make this moveset a little bit better, because with Blaziken, I have given it Hidden Power Ghost. If you didn't already know, fighting and Ghost type moves put together have neutral coverage against every single Pokemon in the game, and I'm gonna have super effective damage for Tate and Liza. To make them as easy as possible, once Blaziken levels up to 45, I use rare candies, bringing it up to level 57 before I go into the double battle. I don't think I have time to set up, so I'm just gonna go on the offense right away. Hidden Power to knock out the Claydol so that I don't get hit by Earthquake. Xatu one-shots my Zigzagoon. By the way, you need 2 Pokemon to initiate this battle with the gym leader. Lunatone came in next, so I want to target it down because I have a Person Berry to counter out Xatu's Confusion. Confuse Ray. But without a Chesto Berry, Hypnosis could be devastating. Hidden Power gets the job done, they send in Soul Rock next, and Xatu chooses Psychic, this time getting a critical hit, knocking Blaziken out. If it hadn't crit, I definitely would have survived, so that's a bit disappointing. In the next battle, it instead chooses to go for Confuse Ray, which I shrug off due to the Person Berry. Then I knock the Xatu out because I don't want to get hit by another status condition, and all that's left is Soul Rock, but it doesn't have any moves that are good against Blaziken. So Hidden Power Ghost is exactly what this fighting type needed. By the way, with fighting type Pokemon in Generation 3, Hidden Power Ghost is pretty much always what you want to run. Okay, Maxie and Tabitha, easy. Archie, also easy. Finally, it is time to upgrade Blaziken's same type attack bonus move. In Sutopolis City, I grab Brick Break and teach this in the place of Double Kick. Juan is next, and while you might be worried about type effectiveness, don't worry, Juan is really bad. The fact that Love Disc is his lead gives me time to set up with Bulk Up, I have a Person Berry to counter confusion, and when the Love Disc does confuse me, then I'm just gonna go on a sweeping spree. Brick Break one-shots the Celio, one-shots the Crawdaunt, one-shots the Whiscash, and that leads to Kingdra. Of all of his Pokemon, this is the most likely to survive, but Blaziken is too strong. Wally is too weak to warrant in-depth narration, so now let's go into the Elite Four with all three of these starter Pokemon and see how they do. Sydney is first. For Blaziken, this is going to be simple. I can set up Substitute on the Mightyena if I want to dodge its sand attacks. As long as I don't set up with Bulk Up to +4, then I will be able to knock it out. Remember, Roar has decreased priority, so even if it sees that you have +3 in your attack stat and tries to use it, as long as you're going to knock the Mightyena out, it's fine. In this case though, I don't even choose to set up, I just sweep with Brick Break. Blaziken one-shots every one of his Pokemon. Substitute gives me free setup against Phoebe because the first Dusclops is terrible. Then I can use Hidden Power Ghost to one-shot the remainder of her Pokemon at +2. I hope you see the trend that's emerging here. Blaziken is really good. This Pokemon is a fantastic starter, and it is a fantastic Pokemon to do a solo challenge with. One day I want to see how it does in Fire Red and Platinum because I think it's going to be great in those games as well. Against Glacia, I can set up Substitute and then Bulk Up, but in this case I wanted to save a little bit of time, so instead I just set up Bulk Up once and then sweep her entire team. Against Drake, I take things a little bit slower, and by that I mean actually setting up Substitute. I go to +3 with Bulk Up, and from there Brick Break and Hidden Power can make it through the remainder of his Pokemon. Plus, having Substitute in place means Intimidate from Salamence never affects Blaziken. Alright, it has been completely dominant in Emerald versions so far, but Wallace is coming up next, the Water type specialist. However, before that, let's go through the other Pokemon. Next is Swampert. I'm using Brick Break here for Sydney. After setting up Substitute, it makes his team fairly straightforward. The Crawdaunt does survive and wasted a little bit of my time, but overall it's inconsequential. Phoebe's also a little bit slower because I don't one-shot her Pokemon. She uses some healing items on the first Dusclops, delaying my win. Then the Bayonet, the Sableye, and the second Bayonet are one-hits, leading to the final Dusclops. But it can't break Swampert's Substitute, so this is an easy fight once again. Glacia is where things start to get really sketchy. Yes, Brick Break is super effective, but it's still two-shotting the initial Celio, and hail damage bypasses Substitute and chips away at your health. So I have roughly half health remaining by the time I move on to the Glalie. Swampert is also not able to one-shot it, which is unfortunate, so my Substitute takes damage from Icy Wind. The next Celio starts the hail up again, I am taking chip damage every turn now, and Ice Beam from the second Glalie breaks my sub. I reset it, but this brings Swampert down to 20 hit points. And then I take hail damage down to 7 hit points. Here's the thing though, hail stops on the perfect turn. I knock out the Glalie and move on to the following Wall Rain, with my Substitutes still intact. Brick Break does more than half, Wall Rain breaks my Substitute with Body Slam. It eats its Citrus Berry, but this doesn't heal it enough to survive another Brick Break. Drake is next, but Swampert has Ice Beam. Now that you understand every single detail during that fight, let's move on to Sceptile. Sydney's straightforward, Leaf Blade for his 3 Pokemon that aren't grass types, and then Hidden Power for the ones that are. Phoebe I can approach the same way I did with the other 2 Pokemon, setting up Substitute, although Leaf Blade is not quite as good here, and Phoebe is sending in her second Dusclops second. That means it can use Ice Beam and break my Substitute and do a decent amount of damage before I knock it out, leaving Sceptile on only 40 hit points. Luckily, Leaf Blade is still able to knock out the Bayonets and and the Sableye in a single hit each, so I still win. By the time I arrive at Glacia is where things really start to get difficult. Walrein is just barely able to survive a hit from Leaf Blade. As a result, it breaks my substitute, I'm taking chip damage from Hail, Glacia uses a full restore, my next Leaf Blade does roll better damage, but then Glalie comes in, Hidden Power Fire is not able to one-shot, it uses Ice Beam and Sceptile faints. I tried this 2 more times, but both of them result in the exact same outcome. The Glalie just gets me with Ice Beam, so I need to be a higher level. I have accumulated 15 rare candies, and I'm only going to use 5 of them now to boost Sceptile up over 2 damage rounding thresholds to level 65. This gives me the one hit on the Walrein so that it doesn't break my substitute, and then the following Glalie can go down over 2 turns with Hidden Power Fire. Unfortunately, I don't have the damage range here, but it doesn't matter. She has 1 more Glalie left over, and for some reason this one faints to a single hit when the first one didn't, so I guess that's good, like cool. It was 2 levels higher and it has better special defense and better HP. So I guess I rolled a bad damage roll on the first one and got a good damage roll on the second one. That is the only way that I can explain this. Before Drake, I teach Sceptile Dragon Claw in the place of Return. Substitute against the Shelgon while it uses Protect, then Dragon Claw to knock it out, as well as the following Flygon. The Altaria survives. It just sets up Dragon Dance and then knock it out after 2 more hits because Drake used a healing item. Salamence can't intimidate me, and while it does break my substitute with Flamethrower, I knock it out over 2 turns. That leaves only Kingdra, and Dragon Claw gets the 1 hit. With that, all 3 of our starters have made it to the champion. This is the second last battle in the game. And I think the results here might surprise you. Let's start things with Sceptile. Technically, it should have an advantage over Wallace's water types, but that isn't really how things stack up, because water types like to have ice moves for coverage. On Wallace's team, 3 Pokemon are like this, the Wailord with Blizzard, Tentacruel with Ice Beam, and Milotic with Ice Beam. Whiscash and Gyarados can still be a threat because they have Hyper Beam, but the Ludicolo is mostly useless, and that is nice to say because usually it's a significant threat. With Sceptile, there isn't a lot of strategy here. I'm just hoping that Leaf Blade's going to be doing enough damage to make it through all of the major threats. I can one-shot the Wailord as well as the Milotic, although the second of these was a critical hit. Tentacruel's next, it has ridiculous special defense and it does hang on. Now in addition to Ice Beam, it also has Sludge Bomb, which is super effective and it will be doing more damage. In this case, a massive amount, bringing Sceptile down to 20 hit points. My Grass type eats its Citrus Berry, Wallace uses a full restore, my next 2 Leaf Blades knock out Tentacruel, and then he sends in Ludicolo. I have just enough health to use Substitute, leaving Sceptile with 1 hit point. Ludicolo begins setting up Double Team. Okay, maybe it is going to get annoying. It then gets a critical hit with Surf, breaking my Substitute. Wallace uses a full restore. My Leaf Blades continue to hit even though he used Double Team, and in the end, I knock out the Pineapple Duck. Here's the thing though, I'm not in a great position. While I do have 4 times damage against the Whiscash, so it's not going to be scary, the Gyarados that follows is a flying type, so it takes neutral damage from Leaf Blade. Unless I get a critical hit, I'm not going to knock it out. It survives with red health, chooses Earthquake, and Sceptile faints. In the next fight, I learned that if I'm not rolling critical hits against the Tentacruel, I'm not going to knock it out in 2 turns, meaning that I will take a lot of damage from Sludge Bomb. I'm left on 6 hit points this time. Luckily, I roll better damage the second time, so sometimes without crits, I can 2-shot. I crit the following Ludicolo, 1-shot the Whiscash, and make it back to the Gyarados. Once again, I do not roll a critical hit, and as a result, I lose for a second time. Now, I can see you criticizing my play here because I still have 9 rare candies left in my inventory. If I had used those, this entire fight would be simpler and Sceptile probably wouldn't have lost. So I'm going to use them now and take Sceptile up to level 75 before trying again. Here's the thing though, I have been getting lucky. If I don't crit the Milotic, it survives and uses Ice Beam. Then Tentacruel is still a 2-hit. In this case, it poisons Sceptile, so that's going to be a loss. Also, if the Milotic is surviving using Ice Beam and then Tentacruel is using Sludge Bomb, Sceptile just faints earlier in the fight. Apparently the first 2 battles I had were actually quite lucky with me making it all the way to the Gyarados. Using the rare candies has not really improved my odds. And in some cases, using rare candies will actually make your odds worse because the enemy Pokemon will see different damage ranges and then choose different moves based on how much they're doing. In some cases, this leads to things like this Milotic using Toxic against my Sceptile. I don't really think this is what's playing out here. I was just getting lucky with the perfect critical hits using Leaf Blade. Anyways, it's pretty frustrating. I get poisoned by the Milotic and have to reset again. That is 5 losses to Wallace. Okay, so I'm making a bad choice here with my moveset. If I teach Earthquake in the place of Dragon Claw, then I have super effective damage for the Tentacruel. This is going to solve at least one of the problems during the battle. I am still not one-hitting the Milotic, which is frustrating. I take damage from Ice Beam, roughly 1/3, then move on to the Tentacruel, and the ground-type move gets the job done. Tentacruel's physical defense isn't all that good. Ludicolo's next, I use Leaf Blade, it sets up double team, he uses a full restore, I miss. Luckily, after that, it just continues setting up double team, eventually choosing Surf, doing pathetic damage before I knock it out. I have half health remaining for the final 2 Pokemon. Of course, the Whiscash is easy. The Gyarados is the real question. Am I going to be able to knock it out? Well, I have enough health to survive its hits because it doesn't have very good moves against me, and the AI doesn't like to choose Earthquake unless it knows it's going to get the one-shot. Wallace might use a full restore here, but it doesn't matter. With 2 Leaf Blades, Gyarados goes down, and Sceptile is victorious. Okay, so things weren't straightforward with the Grass type. That means Blaziken is likely going to have a really rough time here. First of all, I try setting up with Bulk Up on the Wailord. Don't do this. Then Wailord uses a max power Water Spout and finishes me in a single turn. So instead what I should do is attack right away with Brick Break, reduce the power of Water Spout, and then set up. Although I'm still taking almost half from each of these hits, so I can only set up once with Bulk Up before I need to sweep the remainder of his team. Brick Break one-shots the following Ludicolo, Whiscash is next, but it survives, uses Earthquake, and Blaziken faints. I teach Return in the place of Hidden Power so that I have better neutral damage against all of Wallace's Pokemon. Sometimes Wailord crits so that I don't get a chance to try this strategy. I reset, went into the battle a little bit too quickly. This time things go better for me though. Water Spout is doing less damage. I push my setup one more turn to get to +2, and then I start my sweep. One-shotting the Ludicolo, now one-shotting the Whiscash. Well, I got a critical hit there. That's nice, I guess. I one-shot the following Milotic, make it to the Tentacruel, take it out with Hidden Power, which is still on my set, and make it to the Gyarados. Intimidate lowers my attack back to +1, but I still wouldn't have got the one hit even if I had +2. I continue trying the Brick Break Return strategy. I have 3 more fairly quick resets, and then I make it back with +2 to the Gyarados, but this just isn't going to work. Even with Return, which is doing more damage than Hidden Power, it still survives and finishes Blaziken. So I think I need to reinvent my approach here. I'm going to teach Rest in the place of Substitute, and then what I can do is damage the Wailord, set up with Bulk Up, and hopefully rest up somewhere else in the fight. I decide to do it against the Whiscash. This doesn't work out well for me. It just spams Earthquake and Surf and gets me, but in the next battle I hold the Chesto Berry so that it'll wake up right away. I set up on the Wailord to +2, then use Rest, wake up from the Chesto Berry. Wailord chooses Double Edge because I was at low health and it saw that any of its moves would knock me out. This lets me squeeze in a 3rd Bulk Up, getting to +3, and now I should be able to one-hit the Gyarados. With Return, Blaziken can, Gyarados faints, and the champion is defeated. Okay, the question now is, are we going to go 3 for 3 bad fights against Wallace with the Hoenn starters? I can see Swampert having some problems. After all, it takes 4 times damage from Ludicolo's Giga Drain. Before the fight, I use my 6 remaining rare candies to boost Swampert up to level 69. I also teach Hidden Power Grass in the place of Ice Beam. Earthquake on turn 1 takes the Wailord down to red health. It chooses Blizzard, it doesn't do very much damage, and since I know Wallace is going to use a full restore, I can set up Substitute. I 2-shot with Hidden Power Grass, but Wailord does set up Rain Dance, and Ludicolo, which comes in next, has Swift Swim. Getting rid of Ice Beam might not have been the best move. I kind of want super effective damage against this thing. Even with a resisted Earthquake though, I can still do half. It's setting up Double Team, uses Giga Drain, breaking my Substitute, recovering a small amount of health, and after a miss, it uses another Giga Drain, and that's it for Swampert. So what's my answer to this thing? Well, I get a critical hit with Earthquake, and that's that for Ludicolo. Earthquake one-shots the following Tentacruel, Hidden Power Grass takes care of the Whiscash, Gyarados can't intimidate me because I have my Substitute in place. My best move here is Hidden Power Grass, and it is slow going, but I knock it out over 3 turns. Last is Milotic, and Earthquake takes care of it in 2 turns. So Swampert with a lucky critical hit defeats the champion, and now there is only one more battle left for these 3 Pokemon. To prepare for Stevenstone, my standard thing to do is just go grab the leftovers from the SS title. With it, I'm ready to go. For Swampert, I'm running the set Surf, Earthquake, Substitute, and Rest, with leftovers of course. Setting up Substitute on the first turn blocks Skarmory's use of Toxic. It's also free setup if the Skarmory chooses to go for this move or for Spikes. All I want to avoid is Aerial Ace because the Skarmory is never going to choose Steel Wing against me since it's a Steel type move. With 2 uses of Surf, the first Pokemon goes down, then Steven sends in Aggron and Earthquake takes care of it. After that, Cradily comes out. Now it does have Giga Drain which can do 4 times damage. I choose Earthquake which does a third. Okay, I was hoping for a little bit more damage. When it breaks my substitute, it recovers health, so my third Earthquake is not able to knock it out. Swampert gets confused. Steven uses a full restore. Swampert hits itself twice in a row, and then Giga Drain brings me down to 7 hit points. There isn't really a way to get out of this. I try to go for rest, but Swampert hits itself for a third time in a row, and that's a loss. I don't have a way to change my strategy against the Cradily, but I do think it's still possible for Swampert, because with good damage rolls, I should be able to 3-shot, and I also know that the Cradily can choose Ingrain, which it goes for on the second turn in this battle. As a result, I knock it out and move on to the Claydol. Here I re-establish substitute, but it gets broken right away because of a critical hit. A little bit unfortunate. I go for Surf, taking it down to low health. It sets up Light Screen, reducing my damage. This is annoying. Steven's going to buy some time with a full restore, so I take my time too, setting up substitute again. While the going is slow against Claydol, eventually I'm going to knock it out, and then we have 2 Pokemon that I have super effective damage against, Armaldo and Metagross. I wasn't sure what Steven was going to choose next, but he sends in his ace. In this case, Earthquake does roughly a third because Reflect is on the field. Metagross breaks my substitute, then uses Psychic, but it's not doing much damage. As a result, his ace doesn't get much done. The Armaldo comes in next. Surf does massive damage, one-shotting. With that, the game is finished. Swampert gets a time of 1 hour, 23 minutes, and 48 seconds with 4 resets, 0 blackouts at level 71, with a game time of 5 hours and 13 minutes. Before I go on to the other 2 Pokemon Steven attempts, I just want to say this result is so much better than the last time around. 3 hours and 28 minutes seems almost impossible for me. Like, what did I do so wrong that Swampert underperformed so badly? Anyway, this is a major improvement over Swampert's previous time. For Blaziken, the approach to Steven's Stone is so much more straightforward. I have Brick Break, Return, Rest, and Bulk Up. All I need to do is set up against the Skarmory. Eventually, I can use Rest to heal any status conditions, recover my health, and also get back to full health before proceeding with the fight. Over time, Aerial Ace is doing less and less damage. All I'm worried about is the Skarmory getting a critical hit with Aerial Ace at a bad moment. And that does happen in the first fight. I get to +6 and then it crits me, knocking Blaziken out. But in the second battle, I get fully set up. Now, you might be wondering, why is Return on your set? Steven's Pokemon are mostly Steel and Rock types. The only target this move has neutral damage against is the Claydol. And that's the thing, when you're using a fighting type move, the only coverage you really need is a move that will hit the Claydol for decent damage. Plus, I had just taught Blaziken Return for the champion battle, so I felt like I didn't need to replace it for this fight. With +6, I one-shot the Aggron, one-shot the Metagross with Brick Break, one-shot the Armaldo, Return one-shots the Claydol, and Brick Break one-shots the final Cradily. Blaziken clocks in with a time of 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 32 seconds, with 16 resets, 0 blackouts at level 66. That's a game time of 5 hours even. It's time for Sceptile to face Steven's Stone. And in my previous playthrough with it, this is where everything fell apart. There is still the potential for that, but I have a lot of learning going into this second run. I know that I need Hidden Power Fire. I can use Substitute against the Skarmory to mess its AI up, and hopefully it'll just spam Toxic over and over again. It breaks my Substitute once, but after that it continuously uses Toxic, and I knock it out with 2 uses of Hidden Power Fire. My moveset also contains Leaf Blade and Earthquake, so I have super effective damage against most of Steven's Pokemon. One exception is the Armaldo that's next. Leaf Blade will do the most damage, and in this case it's doing slightly less than half. It breaks my substitute, then goes for Slash, bringing Sceptile to around half health before Steven uses a full restore and I have to take my time knocking it out. It chooses Aerial Ace on the next turn, doing massive damage, leaving Sceptile with only 27 health. I'm gaining back a little bit every turn with the leftovers, and strangely, Steven chooses to send in the Claydol next. This just gives me time to recover health. I think the reason this is playing out is because all of Steven's remaining moves are neutral against Sceptile, so he's just going in party order. I one-shot the Claydol with a Leaf Blade, and then my whole theory falls apart because he sends in Metagross next. Why not Aggron or Cradily? I don't know, I don't get it. Anyways, the Metagross easily shrugs off my Earthquake, taking less than half, uses Psychic, and Sceptile faints. I try a new set, including Rest, because Earthquake wasn't very helpful. I try to heal against the Armaldo, and this is just a terrible idea. The Aerial Aces are doing way too much damage. I come back, try again with Earthquake, but I lose to the Armaldo before proceeding with the rest of his team. Then, against Skarmory, it breaks my substitute with Aerial Ace way too many times, and Sceptile takes another reset. Getting by these first 2 Pokemon ends up being one of the most difficult things for Sceptile to do. Okay, so a hilarious thing happens here that gives Sceptile a small advantage. I use Hidden hidden power against the Skarmory, and this causes Steven to withdraw it and send in Armaldo. I very rarely see this kind of behavior, but it's really great for me because then I only take one Aerial Ace from the Armaldo and I can 3-shot using hidden power plus Leaf Blade. Because of this, I can re-establish my substitute on the Skarmory. It comes in trying to use Toxic again, and then I knock it out with hidden power Fire. Then for some reason, Steven does not choose Claydol next, instead sending in Metagross. Maybe it has to do with which moves I've shown him that I have, I don't really know. In this case, I have my substitute still, so I'm only going to take one turn of damage from Metagross, and I can 3-shot. I was so worried about him using a full restore, but instead, the Metagross eats its Citrus Berry, and he doesn't use a healing item. Claydol comes in next, I re-establish my substitute, then I use Leaf Blade to 2-shot and move on to the Aggron. I thought that I would finish it in one turn with 4 times damage from Earthquake, but it doesn't do enough. My substitute gets broken as a result, but once the Aggron goes down, things get easier for Sceptile because Cradily is the only Pokemon left. I set up substitute, Cradily uses Ingrain, I choose Leaf Blade because it does the most damage, and in this case I get a critical hit finishing Steven's Stone. Sceptile's time is 1 hour, 45 minutes and 50 seconds, with 18 resets, 1 blackout at level 76 with a game time of 6 hours and 4 minutes. This is also much better than its 2 hour and 46 minute time that I had previously, so well done Sceptile. Experience really does pay off. If we look at my first attempt tier list, the rankings have also shuffled in order. While Blaziken is still in first place, it's in first place by a much smaller margin, and Swampert has now superseded Sceptile as the second best starter. Okay, let's see how far I can push these Pokemon with follow-up attempts. Before I get into them, I really do want to say I think that my Pokemon Emerald play is kind of subpar. Of all of the games I'm playing on my channel, I think that my skill in Emerald version is perhaps the weakest. If you sat down to do one of these challenges, I wouldn't be surprised if you were able to get better times with these Pokemon. I'm constantly working on my play, trying to make myself better, but it's always an iterative process, and for whatever reason, Emerald is just not really sticking in my brain the way the other games are. That said, I really do think my skill has improved a lot over the past year. The results I'm about to show you would not have been possible for me even just 6 months ago. I'm going to start the follow-ups with Blaziken. This Pokemon has an unfortunate reality to deal with. That's the fact that Roxanne is the first gym leader, and while it is a fighting type, it does not start with Double Kick. As we go through this playthrough, I really want to draw your attention to just how few optional battles I'm going to be doing, and how fast and capable Blaziken is at every stage of the game. For this playthrough, I'm running Hidden Power Ghost, and I'm also going to be running an Adamant Nature, improving my attack and lowering my special attack. This seems strange because I have Ember at the beginning of the game, but I'm not going to use it very much because once I beat Brawly, I'm again going to delete it for bulk up. The problem in the early game comes down to how much damage Ember can do against Roxanne's Pokemon. To get a sense for what Blaziken is going up against, let's look at the damage ranges. This is with a neutral nature, so there is no benefit here to physical moves or special moves. In that case, at level 16, we can compare the damage from Double Kick and Ember. Ember has a 51.9% chance to 2-shot both of the Geodudes, but it also could be a 3-hit. This means Geodudes are going to land between 1 to 2 Rock Tombs, lowering my speed. As Blaziken's speed gets lowered, they are more likely to hit further Rock Tombs, and then on the Nose Pass, Blaziken is likely going to 7-hit with Ember. Now, I could potentially luck through this fight with Focus Energy and Ember in combination getting critical hits, but even in cases like that, a crit on the Nose Pass only does between 32 and 41% damage, and it does between 91 and 109% damage to the Geodudes. So I could fail to knock out the Geodudes with critical hits, and then on the Nose Pass, it has an Oranberry and she has 2 potions. Also, this is using Ember at level 16. If you want to use Ember, you're going to go into the fight at a lower level, like 13 or maybe 15. Going through these damage ranges convinced me that Blaziken's best way through the early game is just fighting trainers and then defeating Roxanne at level 16. Although this does slow it down, especially when compared with a Pokemon like Swampert. The thing about overtraining for Roxanne is that I don't need any more training before I fight Brawly. At level 17 going into 18, he's totally manageable for Blaziken, and then I get Bulk Up, preventing the need for further training throughout the run. Lombre gives me perfect setup before the Marshtomp on the rivals team, so he's not an issue. Watson's entire team is terrible against Blaziken. This time around I have learned my lesson, and I'm now setting up on the Electrike. As I pick up the Secret Power TM, let's let's talk about Blaziken's moveset throughout this run. I think it's actually really simple. In this case, I want to be teaching Blaziken the least number of moves possible. Switching up my moveset just wastes time, and this thing is so good that you don't need any moves other than double kick or secret power for the majority of the run. Peck is just hanging out here because I have nothing else to teach Blaziken and I don't want to waste my time. Like I said before, bulk up turn 1 against slacking, then use double kick and knock it out. Simple, no need to have a reset here. By the time I've arrived at Winona, my moveset has changed up. I've given up secret power for Blaze Kick, and I've also taught hidden power Ghost in the place of Peck. Blaze Kick is here exclusively for the Skarmory and the Tropius. That's it. Once I knock those two Pokemon out, I'm not going to use it anymore in this run. I put Substitute in its place, and then I head to Tate and Liza. Inside their gym when fighting mandatory trainers, Blaziken levels up to 46. Unlike the other two runs, I want to make this battle as easy as possible, so I use all my rare candies here, going from 46 up to 57. Blaziken then just crushes Tate and Liza, spamming hidden power. By the way, I have a particular ordering of targets here. Claydol, Lunatone, Xatu, then Solrock. This minimizes risk as much as is possible. For Juan, I have Brick Break instead of Double Kick. I just set up here with Bulk Up and then sweep his team. It's really easy even though he's a Water type specialist. Now I do take my time and pick up some extra rare candies. This is because Blaziken needs to finish the game at level 68. Otherwise my chance to one-shot the Metagross with +6 goes down significantly, and then I start rolling the dice against Steven, and I really don't want to do that. By the way, during the Elite Four, I don't need to save. Blaziken is actually that good. Substitute trivializes Sydney, Phoebe, Glacia, and Drake. That brings us to the only difficult trainer in this entire playthrough, Wallace. I have a very specific turn ordering that I need to use here. Brick Break turn 1 to bring the Wailord to low health so that Water Spout deals very little damage. Then, next turn he is going to use a full restore and I'm going to choose Bulk Up. This increases my damage, but I don't want to KO it, so I have to use Return next to deal more damage to the Wailord. This brings it to red health, and hopefully it's choosing Water Spout by this point. If it is, then I can use 2 more Bulk Ups, getting to +3 attack, and after that, as you've seen before, I can set up Substitute and then just sweep Wallace's team. So far, Blaziken has no resets in this follow-up run. Now, Steven's Stone is not difficult like Wallace is, but this fight is random. If he just spams Aerial Ace against Blaziken, I will get a reset here. It happens once, then I go back into the fight choosing Rest over Substitute. Both work, by the way. Substitute is slightly faster if you get good luck, but Rest is a little bit more robust. Honestly, it's mostly personal preference. In this case, I was going with Substitute the first time around, hoping that I was just going to get lucky, but I don't. Anyways, with Rest, I can set up, then at +6, I'm going to sweep through Steven's team. I want you to know the damage range against the Metagross. At level 68, which I mentioned before, it is an 82.4% chance to one-shot with Brick Break once set up to full with Bulk Up. But at only level 67, which is my current level, it is only a 59% chance to one-hit. It would have been nice to get one more level, but I'm trying to save as much time as is possible with Blaziken, so I'm going into this with a slightly risky strategy. This time around I get the lucky roll, Metagross faints, and with that I sweep through the rest of his team in a series of one-hits. Blaziken clocks in with a follow-up time of 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 32 seconds, with 1 reset, 0 blackouts at level 68, and a game time of 4 hours and 13 minutes. This time blows all of my former results in follow-up runs out of the water. Blaziken is so fantastic. But Swampert is also surprisingly good. I came into these runs thinking that it wasn't going to do very well in solo challenges, and it has really impressed me. In the early game, it isn't stuck doing as much optional training as Blaziken is, so it's going to make it through Roxanne with a better time. However, this advantage only lasts so long, because once I arrive in Dewford Island, I need to be level 18 to defeat Brawly. I tried fighting him at lower levels, and it did not go well. I would get like 5 resets in a row and then just restart the playthrough and try again. I lost several times doing that, got really frustrated, and then decided to start skipping him in my Swampert playthroughs. Then, after comparing my results with Ike the Killer's results, I got really disappointed, because I was like a ridiculous amount of time slower, like 10 minutes slower, and I genuinely didn't know what I was doing wrong. One of the things is backtracking to Brawly. It does waste a lot of time, and if you can fight him, you might as well. So for Swampert, putting in the time training now makes the most sense. There is still the chance to lose against Brawly. The turns here are really important. I want to be using Mudshot on the Machop to knock it out in 2 turns. Then for the Meditite and the Makuhita, I'm going to spam Water Gun. While the Meditite can't do anything, I'm hoping that he uses his super potions here because the Makuhita can cause serious problems, as you will see playing out before your eyes. I get brought to 3 hit points before I knock it out and take the win. The next problem for Swampert to solve is Norman. The issue that I was initially having against him was I would arrive here with 68 or 66 speed. As you can see, my Swampert is level 35 with 68 speed, so it is slower than the Linoon and the Slacking. This was really frustrating, and then I kept losing to the Slacking because Dig wasn't effective. This is another reason there was so much discrepancy between my time and Ike the Killer's time. I was training significantly more to go to level 37 before taking this fight on. I don't need to do that though. Water Gun turn 1, so that the Slacking can't use counter, Mud Shot turn 2, lowering the Slacking's speed, then use Dig with the outspeed and get a free win. By the way, you will notice here that I'm using a Naughty Nature, boosting my attack and lowering my special defense. This is incredibly important for a damage range against Steven Stone's Cradily. I really wish I could run a special attack boosting nature for this playthrough so that Surf would do more damage throughout the mid game, but realistically I don't need that. Surf is still just effective enough. Okay, I want to talk one difference now between Ike the Killer's strategies and mine. In my playthroughs, if I'm not training for Roxanne on wild Pokemon, I don't allow myself to catch an Abra. This is just because it feels a little bit unfair. I don't want to search for an Abra every single time. It's only a 10% chance encounter, and if you're throwing a Great Ball, you have a 41% chance to catch it. These odds are not good enough to replicate in every playthrough. As a result, I have not forced the Abra encounter in any of my runs, and I only catch Abra when I'm doing extensive training in that area and I have a chance to run into multiple of them. Abra does have the chance to save quite a bit of time during the mid game. One particularly good example of that is when you have to grab Ice Beam from the abandoned ship. Having the ability to teleport back to Mauville City saves roughly 45 seconds, but today without Abra, I'm gonna have to surf back there with Swampert. This run alone has made me seriously consider if I should be forcing Abra as an HM user and then using it with every single Pokemon. I spent quite some time actually attempting to run into wild Abra and catching them with Swampert just to shave this small amount of time out of the run, because as you'll see very soon, Swampert's time is actually going to be competitive with Blaziken. However, if I added Abra to both of these runs, then Blaziken would get the same advantage, so really what I was trying to do here was unfair. I'm trying to add Abra to Swampert and not to Blaziken, and then eventually for my final playthrough I decided to not go for Abra. Let me know what you think about Abra in the comments. Should I be using it? Should I be skipping it? Is my current approach correct, or should I adjust my rules? I'll consider taking a new approach in 2025 if the reasoning that I see in the comments is good enough to change my mind. Whenever I make updates to my rules like this, I always do it very slowly because adding new rules in quickly has ended up burning me in the past. Just look at some of the jank there is in Generation 1 regarding glitches, like the paralysis invulnerability glitch. Everyone really seems to hate that right now. I am thinking about it, but I'm not going to adjust my rules just yet. One thing that you may not have perspective on when watching these videos is the fact that I am also communicating to a large number of people who have never seen videos like this in every single video and run that I do. If I make the rules extremely convoluted, banning one glitch in certain scenarios but not in other scenarios where it's more interesting, then it becomes extremely hard for me to communicate that in a concise way to everyone watching these videos. Plus, I also want a rule set that's fairly easy for you to recreate at home if you want to sit down and do these runs yourself. If I say, well, I banned this glitch in this scenario but not this glitch in this other scenario, it gets really complicated. Anyway, I also think that my Generation 1 rules are already way too convoluted. I'm trying to make them as simple as possible and remove stuff like this instead of add more exceptions. In the end though, Generation 1 is just really janky, and it's hard to have a rule set that is both fun to watch and fun to play while being easy to understand. Okay, back from that tangent. Throughout the mid-game, I'm running Surf, Secret Power, Mud Shot, and Ice Beam. Once arriving in Lily Cove City, I teach Substitute in the place of Mud Shot. This is a weird section of the game where I'm running a Naughty Nature boosting my attack, but I'm mostly using special moves, Surf and Ice Beam. Things like this look suboptimal, and I'm always trying to find ways around them, but I really do need to two-shot Steven Stone's Cradily using Earthquake. And Secret Power right now is on my set just because it has been the best physical move, and I didn't want to backtrack for Return, which wastes quite a bit of time. I'm going to replace it now before Tate and Liza for Hidden Power Bug. This is a Hidden Power typing that has come up in the later stages of the year, and I didn't think it would be useful, but Ike the Killer has really shown how incredible it can be. It's great here against Tate and Liza, especially the Lunatone, which has low physical defense, even though it's a rock type. It's also good against Sydney, who's coming up fairly soon, and then it can be helpful against champion Wallace's Ludicolo. Although in the case today with Swampert, it is not useful for many of those scenarios. Really, the only reason I want it is here for Tate and Liza. I'm going to use Surf on turn 1 to deal a lot of damage, then Ice Beam to knock out the Xatu, and from there, I'm going to use Surf again to knock out the Claydol and deal a lot of damage to Soul Rock. I want to avoid it going for Sunny Day or choosing Solar Beam, so I use Surf again, knocking the Soul Rock out, and then I can finish off the Lunatone. Hidden Power is here in case the battle goes slightly differently and I want to one-shot the Lunatone from full health. And that's the only use for it in this playthrough, because next I'm going to get rid of it to have access to Earthquake. With Swampert in Victory Road, I do some training. This brings it up to level 55. And from here, I'm going to use 13 rare candies to boost it to level 68 before starting the league. Being higher level allows me to stomp these trainers. I do need Ice Beam for Drake, and this is where I need to start discussing Steven Stone's Cradily, because Ice Beam is fundamentally bad against the champion, and I need a move that can hit the Gyarados for decent damage. In this case, I'm going to be using Return in the place of Ice Beam, so I no longer have access to the Ice-type move against Steven Stone's Cradily, unless I want to go back to the game corner and purchase a second copy, but that's going to waste additional time, and using the Naughty Nature in combination with Earthquake is a little bit more concise. This does expose Swampert to one risk against the champion, and that's the Ludicolo using Giga Drain. Another way to play this is using the move deleter to get rid of Surf before fighting the league. Then you can use Hidden Power Bug throughout the league and use it on the Ludicolo to get the guaranteed one hit. In the case where I'm using Return, I have to two-shot, which is annoying because it can set up double team. If it uses Giga Drain and breaks my substitute, then things can spiral out of control, because I need to block Intimidate from the Gyarados to make sure that Return is two-shotting. Just so you're aware, here are Swampert's damage ranges after it has had its attack lowered by one stage. In this case, Return will 3-shot the Gyarados. It only has a 12.1% chance to 2-hit. In this case though, I pull through on my first attempt. No resets for Swampert so far. This is where the damage ranges really come back to bite this water type. I need to be level 73 to get the 2-hit consistently against Steven Stone's Cradily. For example, here's what happens if you fight Steven Stone at level 71. There is a 56.7% chance that Earthquake is going to 2-hit. The problem with this damage range is that the Cradily is likely going to break your substitute using Giga Drain and heal slightly, which pushes the likelihood of getting the 2-hit even lower. At level 73, Earthquake goes up to a 95.2% chance, and the damage is between 49 and 57%. Because I used my rare candies before the Elite Four to make them all faster and to make Wallace a little bit more manageable, I'm also going to go to the Safari Zone to pick up one additional rare candy, which is a time investment, and it does slow Swampert down just slightly. I also make a mistake here in the late game. It was something Ike the Killer and I were discussing, which is going to the move reminder and teaching Protect in the place of Return. Unlike a lot of Pokemon in the late game of Emerald version, Swampert doesn't need 4 moves. It only needs 3: Surf, Earthquake, and Substitute. The idea with Protect is that we can stall out Giga Drain's 5 PP, and once the Cradily is no longer able to attack, then we should win. The thing is, this route synergizes all the play around two-shotting the Cradily, so using Protect is not what we want to be doing anyway. And every time I choose Protect, there is more of a chance that it uses Ingrain and starts gaining back health every turn. Anyway, I don't have time to go back and do another Swampert playthrough at the current time, because this was my 5th playthrough for this video. I had also done 4 Blaziken runs. I tried to do a 5th one, but I ran out of time once again, and I also had eaten into my budget for Sceptile follow-up playthroughs, which is going to have consequences on the future releases throughout daily December. One of the comments I get on these videos that frustrates me the most is when people say it's unfair how many runs I did with each Pokemon. You know why that frustrates me? Because I put my heart and soul into every one of these videos trying to get the best possible times with every Pokemon. I run these Pokemon as many times as I can before I truly run out of time. And I mean, like, I'll skip lunches sometimes, I'll stay up late, I will skip hanging out with my wife on some evenings to try and squeeze in extra playthroughs with certain Pokemon that I think deserve better times. For anyone that is frustrated with the number of runs that I do with every Pokemon and the sometimes asymmetry which seems unfair, I promised all of you that eventually I do intend to come back and do these runs again on stream to re-rank the Pokemon. In this case with Swampert, the only mistake I would correct is my use of Protect in the final fight, because I beat Steven Stone on my first attempt, so Swampert gets a follow-up time of 1 hour 6 minutes and 32 seconds, with 0 resets and blackouts at level 74. This is a game time of 4 hours and 19 minutes. Okay, because of the choices I made with both Blaziken and Swampert doing too many runs with them, I did not have time to do many with Sceptile. I only actually came back and did 1 follow-up playthrough, so I'm going to narrate that one and talk about the strategy, and then at the very end of this video, I will insert final results that I got with Sceptile if I was able to find time to come back to do other playthroughs with it. The final playthrough that I do with it is still going to utilize this strategy. With potentially one modification. So to know what the final level Sceptile needs for its playthrough is, we need to check the damage ranges against Steven Stone. The reason I was having so much problems before is that Sceptile didn't have any way to recover health. Axukarisora and Ike the Killer seem to have solved this over on my Discord because they're using Giga Drain against him. So the final set that I'm going to run against Steven Stone is Substitute, Leaf Blade, Hidden Power Fire, and Giga Drain. The damage range that I want to draw your attention to is how Sceptile does against Metagross. At level 75, Sceptile has a 99% chance to two-shot, which is very consistent. But at level 73, it has a 71.8% chance to two-shot. When I was investigating this run, Ike the Killer was talking about how level 73 feels very inconsistent against the Metagross using Hidden Power Fire. So I decided to go into this playthrough and play the more consistent strategy at level 75. Although, looking at the exact damage ranges, I do think that Hidden Power Fire at level 73 is a good choice. You're going to save some time and have a slightly riskier Steven fight, but you get to skip candies like the Safari Zone candy or the Trick House candy. And both of those take a significant amount of time to obtain. This will be the one alteration I make if I come back and do this run again. I'm going to complete the game with Sceptile at level 73 instead of 75. Other than that, things are fairly straightforward in this run. Roxanne is easy, Brawly is not, he's pretty sketchy even at level 18, but Sceptile does have what it takes to get through him. Note, I am forgetting the Miracle Seed here, that would help out a little bit. I trained to get Leaf Blade for Watson, which makes him simple, and now we need to talk about Flannery. I'm going to credit Ike the Killer here for the strategy. I'm going in at level 36. I do not expect to win, but I'm going to be spamming a bunch of Leaf Blade, and I could get occasional crits, which will increase my chances of winning. Also, every time I go up against the Torkoal, there's a chance that it just misses with Overheat and gives me a free win. There's another reason though why fighting Flannery over and over and blacking out here every time I lose is an effective strategy, because her Pokemon gives special attack EVs. This will improve Sceptile's damage throughout the remainder of the playthrough. One thing I don't like about this strategy is it takes a decent amount of time to get back to Flannery, jumping through these little ash puddles every single time. I don't know what they are. Are they trampolines? I guess they're trampolines. It doesn't really make sense if they're anything else. But then how do you like fall down through them? I don't know. The mechanics of this gym make no sense. I want to see a live action version of this gym just so that I can wrap my mind around what's going on in here. Anyway, blacking out here over and over again gives me repeated attempts for Leaf Blade to come through with critical hits. It gives me more special attack EVs, and it also has the potential to give me a very fast Flannery split. Since there is so much upside, it doesn't make sense to try and fight Flannery at a higher level with more consistency, which is what I tried to do before with Sceptile. Eventually, I'm able to win, in this case at almost level 38. This is not a great Flannery split, but it's still pretty good. I know that some of you are going to be asking about alternative strategies here. One of them is Hidden Power Water. Luckily, we have some data about this from Axukarisora, who did a run with Sceptile. He used Hidden Power Water specifically to smooth out Flannery. However, his report was that then he had to do extensive late game training, and his fight against Steven at level 80 was still awful. I quote, "Sceptile doesn't have enough special attack to muscle its way through Steven, and it isn't as tanky as, say, Meganium. Meganium did that fight far better with its good defensive stats." His results with Sceptile when using Hidden Power Water were a time of 1 hour, 38 minutes, and 27 seconds. With resets to Rival 2, Watson, and a ton to Steven Stone, he did not list the exact number. He also had blackouts to Camper Flint and in the Elite Four. He finished the game at level 80 with a game time of 5 hours and 38 minutes. At level 37, Dig is going to one-hit the Numel and the Slugma, but it's going to 2-hit the Camerupt and 3-hit the Torkoal. If you look at the damage ranges for Leaf Blade, they are actually very similar. I'm going to one-hit the Numel. I have a higher chance to one-hit the Camerupt because of Leaf Blade's high critical hit rate. I have a lower chance to one-hit the Slugma with Leaf Blade, but I could always just use Secret Power for the one-shot and not have to spend 2 turns with Dig. And then if we look at Torkoal, Leaf Blade has a 94.4% chance to 3-hit and a 38.5% chance to 2-hit, whereas Dig only has a 12.1% chance to 2-hit. So again, rolling for Leaf Blade here makes a little bit more sense than using the move that is super effective. By the way, Sceptile is not going to be indefinitely stuck on Flannery because at level 38, its damage ranges get much better. It has a 43.8% chance to 2-hit the Torkoal when using Leaf Blade. Unfortunately, the damage ranges don't really improve there over the next damage damage rounding threshold at level 40. It takes all the way until 43 for Leaf Blade to get a higher chance to KO, and by that time, Dig is more effective. By the way, all of those damage ranges were not using the Miracle Seed and not using the Soft Sand. If you are using the Soft Sand, then Leaf Blade is still better than Dig at level 38. And in this case, I forgot to pick up the Miracle Seed, but because we're relying on crits to knock out the Torkoal, the number of turns to KO does not change even if you equip this item. Okay, let's move on with Sceptile's playthrough. Throughout the mid-game with Leaf Blade, Hidden Power, and Secret Power with Substitute, Sceptile just kind of lays waste to all of its enemies. One small thing that I would change is how I approach Tate and Liza. In this case, I'm running Secret Power. This is not a good idea because the Xatu has Synchronize and I want to be attacking it with physical moves. That's because it's going to set up with Calm Mind and make my life absolutely awful. I end up taking 2 resets here as a result of this, but the solution is very simple. Just teach Return because I will have visited Pacifidlog Town by this point. Before the Elite Four, just like with Swampert, I'm going to use my rare candies with Sceptile. This makes the League members very simple, and I have Dragonclaw to smooth out Drake. Although I will mention the fact that in this run with Sceptile, I forgot to have an escape rope, so when I was picking up Dragonclaw, I had to walk all the way back out of Meteor Falls, which lost some time. For Wallace, I start using my final set: Leaf Blade, Hidden Power Fire, Giga Drain, and Substitute. I learned something during the first fight that there is a gamble here. When Milotic comes in, it has a chance of using either Ice Beam or Toxic. I didn't go for Substitute, and as a result I get hit by the status condition and that causes a reset. There are some ways around this. Either get lucky on the Milotic and then use Substitute on the Tentacruel because it's also likely to be using Toxic, or I can just go for Substitute right away on the Milotic and hopefully block Toxic. So I have to get a little bit lucky here to win, but overall the fight's not that difficult once you make it by all of these Pokemon and you don't get hit by the status condition. Notably, I am holding a Person Berry, so the other answer is holding a Pecha Berry instead. I think I should just do that. The reason I'm not doing that is because I cut all the berries out of my playthrough to try and save as much time as is possible with all 3 of these Pokemon. Up until now, I've just been picking up pretty much every berry that I think is good. I am trying to make that not a habit anymore so that I can start getting better Emerald results. For Sceptile, I grab the leftovers, the Safari Candy, do a little bit of training up to 74, and then I face Steven Stone at level 75. Okay, here's how this fight goes. Substitute turn 1, we have to pray that the Skarmory isn't spamming Aerial Ace. Then Hidden Power to knock it out over 2 turns. After that, Leaf Blade for the Armaldo, and it doesn't really matter if I take some damage here because he sends in Claydol next, and I can drain it with Giga Drain, establish my Substitute, and take my time here. Once it goes down, Sceptile should be around half health, and with my damage ranges, I can 2-shot the Metagross. Beyond that, things get easier. 2-shot the Aggron with Leaf Blade, then use Substitute, and take my time against the Cradily. In my second Sceptile playthrough for this video, I get a time of 1 hour, 23 minutes, and 46 seconds, with 3 resets, 4 blackouts at level 76, with a game time of 5 hours and 17 minutes. Okay, to close this video out, let's look at the tier list. Now, this is for all of my first playthroughs, so I won't be updating Sceptile, Blaziken, or Swampert's results here. Instead, let's rank them now in the follow-up tier list. Right now, the top place result that I have is with Medicham, a Pokemon that is fantastic in Emerald version. I got a time of 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 56 seconds. I think I need to do another Medicham playthrough. Anyway, both Blaziken and Swampert blow it out of the water with their results today, so Blaziken takes spot number 1, and Swampert takes spot number 2. Sceptile's results were not quite as good. So with the current run that I have done up until the point that I'm doing this voiceover, right now it has the last place spot in the S tier behind Mewtwo. Although, I do want to mention the fact that now there is a 1 hour and 23 minute time and a 1 hour and 5 minute time that are in the exact same tier. So we need to rebalance this graphic. I think what makes most sense right now is changing the S tier to be Pokemon that have times under an hour and 10 minutes. That leaves only Blaziken and Swampert in this tier. Then times under an hour and 15 minutes will be the A tier, and times under an hour and 20 minutes will be the B tier. This gets us closer to a normal distribution, but there's a lack of playthroughs in the C and D tier. I guess I just need to find some Pokemon that'll play the game in this amount of time. Or maybe Emerald is a little bit more biased towards Pokemon that overperform and Pokemon that underperform. As I collect more data, we will find out. Here are the run summaries for these 3 Pokemon in case you want to do these playthroughs yourself. I would highly recommend playing Blaziken. It is so much fun in Generation 3. And I'm saying that as someone who doesn't like fire types, but remember, Blaziken is good because it's a fighting type. It's not not good because it's a fire type. Swampert, on the other hand, is a little bit more nuanced and it takes some time to figure out. Sceptile is by far the worst of these 3 starters, and even under ideal circumstances, its time will never get close to the other 2. If you support me through YouTube memberships or through Patreon, thank you so much. It means the world to me, especially during times like this in December where my work schedule is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so this is the second last Emerald video of the year. It originally was supposed to be the finale, but the final run that I'm doing this year is related to a run that I did earlier in the year, and I have packed a little bit too much into the video, so I need a little bit more time for the final video. So stay tuned for next week when I play Pokemon Emerald with only a Nincada and only a Shedinja. Okay, I'm back to report on my new Sceptile results. I spent the entire afternoon trying to get another satisfactory run with it. This one still has some mistakes. It is hard to do a playthrough with absolutely none. Anyway, this is still a better result than before. I did just want to note one thing. It's a little bit hard to finish the game at level 73 because there's a bunch of mandatory experience after Tate and Liza that just kind of gets you around level 74 by the time you're facing Steven. Also, before I go through the results, I just want to mention the fact that Rival 2 caused so many problems and wasted about an hour and a half before I realized I should just be using Rock Tomb against him. My subconscious had literally deleted this move from existence and I did not want to use it with Sceptile, but then once you do use it, that fight becomes a little bit easier. I also didn't get perfect Flannery luck, so I had to black out to her multiple times before finally taking the win. In the end, I did successfully put into play the return strategy against Tate and Liza, and that made them so much easier. In this playthrough with Sceptile, I had 1 reset to Steven Stone, but that was it for the entire run, and I only had 2 blackouts on Flannery, so its final result is 1 hour 19 minutes and 28 seconds, with 1 reset, 2 blackouts at level 74, with a game time of 5 hours and 6 minutes. I'm satisfied with this for now. I got it under the hour and 20 mark, and put another Pokemon into the already crowded B tier. Today, Sceptile's results are the slowest in this tier, so it earns itself a placement behind Breloom. Okay, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.